The truth is a poison that most people prefer not to taste, not because they are stupid, but because they are wise in a way that conventional intelligence rarely recognizes. They have instinctively understood that certain truths destroy the ability to function in the world as it is built. Collective ignorance is not a flaw of the human system. It is its most essential characteristic. It is the invisible glue that keeps civilization united, the necessary anesthetic that makes mass existence tolerable. The herd does not choose ignorance out of weakness, but for survival. Because seeing too clearly is incompatible with living peacefully. Every society operates on a foundation of consensual lies. These lies are not necessarily deliberate falsehoods, but rather half-truths, convenient simplifications, comforting narratives that allow millions of people to coexist without collapsing under the weight of the unbearable complexity of reality. When everyone agrees to believe in the same fiction, that fiction gains the power of truth within the social system. Money is paper without intrinsic value until we all agree it has value. Law is ink on paper until we all agree to submit to it. The nation is an imaginary border until millions are willing to kill and die for it. Collective ignorance is not the absence of knowledge. It is the tacit agreement not to examine too closely the fictions that sustain us. Nietzsche called it herd morality, a system of values designed not for individual excellence, but for group cohesion. The herd requires conformity, predictability, the suppression of everything that stands out too much in any direction. The values of the herd are not the values of truth or greatness. They are the values of security and comfort. Better a shared lie than a truth that divides. Better harmonious mediocrity than disruptive excellence. Better collective illusion than solitary clarity. The herd does not pursue wisdom. It pursues comfort and finds that comfort in the mutual validation of shared ignorance. This dynamic becomes visible when you observe how societies react to those who refuse to participate in collective fictions. The individual who points out fundamental inconsistencies, who questions basic assumptions, who refuses to pretend that obvious contradictions do not exist, is immediately marked as problematic. Not because they are wrong, but precisely because they are right in ways that threaten the functioning of the system. Society can tolerate superficial criticism, even encourage it as a sign of its openness. But it cannot tolerate fundamental criticism, the questioning that goes so deep as to threaten to destabilize the necessary fictions upon which everything is built. The child who shouts that the emperor is naked is not celebrated as a bearer of truth. He is silenced as a disruptor of social order, because everyone can see that the emperor is naked. The function of the story is not to reveal a hidden truth, but to illustrate that collective ignorance is an act of will, not incapacity. The adults in the story are not blind. They are accomplices. They have learned the fundamental lesson of social life. Some truths are better left unspoken because articulating them destroys the fabric of shared illusion that makes cooperation possible. This complicity begins early, in the very process of socialization. Children are born as little savage philosophers, questioning everything, rejecting answers that do not satisfy their innate logic. But the educational system, the family, the entire society systematically work to domesticate this dangerous curiosity. Not through violent suppression, which would be too obvious, but through subtle rewards for conformity and equally subtle punishments for dissent. The child quickly learns that asking uncomfortable questions leads to isolation, while repeating correct answers leads to approval. They are not directly taught what to think. They are taught that certain types of thinking are socially costly, while others are socially profitable. By the time they reach adulthood, this conditioning is so complete that most people are not even aware that it is happening. They have internalized the boundaries of what can be thought, the limits of what can be questioned, the territories of discourse that are beyond the reach of critical examination. These boundaries do not need to be imposed externally because they are already embedded in the very structure of how they think. The flock self-disciplines, each member watching and correcting the deviations of others, all participating in the thought police without the need for a central authority to command it. The perverse beauty of this system is that it presents itself as its opposite. Contemporary Western societies pride themselves on their freedom of expression, their openness to debate, their tolerance of diverse opinions. And this self-perception is not entirely false. You can express a wide range of opinions without being imprisoned or executed. But But freedom of expression without social consequences is a fiction. You can say whatever you want, but if what you say challenges the orthodoxies of the moment too deeply, you will face social ostracism, loss of professional opportunities, exclusion from public spaces. Contemporary censorship does not come from the state. It comes from the herd itself, which has learned to defend itself against threatening ideas through exclusion and discrediting rather than legal prohibition. This social control mechanism is much more effective than any form of state censorship because it is diffuse and invisible. There is no official censor to appeal to, no specific law to challenge. There are only the cumulative weight of thousands of microsocial decisions that collectively make certain ideas unthinkable, not because they are prohibited, but because expressing them has a social cost that most are unwilling to pay. The herd protects itself through the constant threat of exile, and this threat is enough to keep the majority within acceptable lines of thought without the need for explicit violence. The mass psychology that underpins this dynamic was brilliantly documented by Gustave Le Bon in his work on crowd psychology. Le Bon observed that individuals in groups behave in fundamentally different ways than they would alone. The crowd has its own mind, a collective intelligence that is invariably inferior to the intelligence of its individual members. In the crowd, people lose their capacity for critical thinking, their sense of personal responsibility, their moral inhibition. They become suggestible, emotional, susceptible to simplistic narratives. The crowd does not reason, it reacts. It does not analyze, it feels. It does not question, it believes. This cognitive regression that occurs in group contexts is not a mistake, it is a feature. The survival of the species throughout most of human history depended on group cohesion, not individual brilliance. Ancestors who constantly questioned group decisions, who refused to conform to tribal norms, who insisted on their individual perspective against collective consensus, were less likely to survive and reproduce than those who suppressed their doubts and followed the herd. Evolution selected for conformity because conformity was adaptive in environments where group isolation equaled death. The modern human brain carries this evolutionary inheritance. We are neurologically programmed to seek group approval, to conform to social norms, to experience psychological pain when we are excluded. Neuroimaging studies show that social rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain. Being excluded from the herd is not only emotionally uncomfortable, it is literally painful at the neural level. This brain architecture makes collective ignorance the path of least resistance. Questioning the group's orthodoxies requires overcoming deep neurological impulses that push us toward conformity. And the group knows this. The flock, in its collective unconscious wisdom, has developed sophisticated mechanisms to identify and neutralize potential dissidents. The first of these mechanisms is labeling. Anyone who questions the dominant narratives too aggressively is immediately categorized with labels that discredit them. Conspiracy theorist, extremist, crazy, dangerous. These labels serve as warning signals to the rest of the flock, marking the individual as someone outside the boundaries of respectful discourse. Once labeled, everything that person says can be dismissed without serious examination, because the label itself is sufficient proof that their ideas do not deserve consideration. The second mechanism is ridicule. Ideas that threaten herd orthodoxy are not seriously debated. They are turned into objects of mockery. Laughter is a devastating social weapon because it transforms intellectual challenge into comedic spectacle. When something can be effectively ridiculed, it loses its threatening power. You no longer need to refute it logically, you just need to turn it into a joke. The herd protects itself through humor, using collective laughter to indicate which ideas are outside the bounds of acceptability. The third mechanism is moralization. Ideas that challenge orthodoxy are not simply wrong, they are morally repugnant. Questioning certain narratives is not an intellectual error, it is a character flaw. This strategy is particularly effective because it transforms intellectual disagreement into moral judgment. We are no longer debating facts or interpretations. We are assessing the fundamental decency of individuals. And in this realm, the herd always wins because the herd defines what counts as decency. Being declared immoral by the herd is the prelude to complete social exclusion. These mechanisms operate so effectively that most people never develop truly independent thoughts. What they believe to be their personal opinions are actually the opinions of their tribe, internalized and experienced as their own. This is not evident to them because the internalization was so complete that the boundaries between their own thinking and group thinking have completely blurred. They believe they arrived at their conclusions through personal reflection, when in reality, they followed the path of least social resistance, adopting beliefs that maximize their acceptance within their reference group. The evidence of this becomes clear when you observe how people's opinions tend to cluster according to their demographics. The political tribe, socioeconomic class, geography, education, all these factors accurately predict what personal opinions an individual will have on a wide range of topics. If thinking were truly independent, we would expect to see more or less random distributions of opinions. Instead, we see perfect correlations. People think like their tribe thinks, and they call this independent thinking. This illusion of intellectual autonomy is perhaps the most insidious form of collective ignorance. We are not only conformists, we are conformists who believe they are rebels. We do not just repeat the narratives of the herd. We defend them as if they were our personal discoveries. Most people who consider themselves critical thinkers are simply members of a different herd, one defined by its opposition to another herd, but operating with the same group conformity dynamics. The rebel who adopts all the opinions of counterculture is no less conformist than the conservative who adopts all the opinions of the establishment. Both have chosen a tribe and have adopted its complete package of pre-packaged beliefs. True intellectual independence is so rare that it is almost non-existent. It requires not only rejecting dominant orthodoxies, but also rejecting orthodoxies of rejection. It requires being willing to be alone, without the comfort of any tribe. It requires developing opinions that do not neatly fit into any pre-existing ideological package, which put you at odds with all sides of every debate. It requires the willingness to be consistently uncomfortable, never finding an intellectual home where all your beliefs are validated. This is a psychologically unsustainable position for most people. Complete intellectual isolation is a form of torture that few can endure for long. That is why most choose the flock, not because they are too stupid to think for themselves, but because they are wise enough to recognize that thinking for themselves would condemn them to a life of perpetual alienation. The flock offers something that the truth cannot: belonging. And for most humans, the need to belong outweighs the need for truth. This is not a moral weakness, it is a psychological reality. We are social animals whose mental architecture was shaped by millions of years of living in groups where exclusion meant death. You cannot simply override this programming through willpower. Collective ignorance also offers another form of comfort that is rarely recognized: the dilution of responsibility. When everyone believes the same thing, when everyone participates in the same mistake, no individual needs to bear the full weight of being wrong. The herd provides moral cover. If it turns out that you were on the wrong side of history, at least you were not alone. Millions shared your mistake, which somehow makes it less shameful. Collective guilt is more tolerable than individual guilt. Being wrong with the herd is forgivable. Disagreeing with the herd and being wrong is unforgivable. This dilution of responsibility allows for mass atrocities. Stanley Milgram's experiments on obedience to authority demonstrated that ordinary people are capable of inflicting severe pain on others when acting under orders from an authority perceived as legitimate. But these experiments also revealed something else. The presence of other participants drastically increases the willingness to obey. When you can see that others are doing the same, your internal resistance weakens. The herd normalizes the behavior, no matter how aberrant that behavior is when viewed outside the group context. Genocides, mass atrocities, crimes against humanity are rarely perpetrated by lone sadists. They are carried out by ordinary people operating within herds that have collectively agreed on a definition of reality that justifies the unjustifiable. The perpetrators of the Holocaust were not exceptional monsters. They were ordinary bureaucrats following orders, participating in a collective ignorance about the humanity of their victims. Dehumanization is a group act, a collective agreement not to see what is right in front of your eyes. And once the herd has agreed not to see something, it becomes invisible to all its members, no matter how obvious it is to anyone looking from outside. This is the darkness at the heart of collective ignorance. It not only protects us from uncomfortable truths about the world, but also from uncomfortable truths about ourselves. The herd allows us to participate in systems of exploitation and violence while maintaining our self-image as good and moral people. We can consume products made through slave labor while being outraged by injustice in the abstract. We can support policies that cause mass suffering while sleeping peacefully at night. We can be accomplices to atrocities while considering ourselves innocent. The herd provides the narratives that make this cognitive dissonance possible. The stories we tell ourselves to avoid confronting our participation in systems that, if we examined them honestly, we would find morally repugnant. Collective ignorance about the structure of the global economy is a perfect example. Most people in the developed world live materially comfortable lifestyles that depend directly on the systematic exploitation of workers in the developing world. Every cheap product you buy was made possible by someone somewhere working in conditions you would consider intolerable. Every electronic device contains minerals mined through child labor. Every cheap garment was sewn by someone earning pennies an hour. This is not hidden information. It is available to anyone willing to look for it. But the herd has collectively agreed not to search too aggressively, not to scrutinize too closely the supply chains that make our comfort possible. This ignorance is not accidental, it is cultivated. Because if we truly internalize the direct connection between our consumption and the suffering that makes it possible, we would have to change our behavior or face the unbearable dissonance of recognizing ourselves as indirect perpetrators of exploitation. Both options are psychologically costly. Changing behavior requires sacrifice. Recognizing complicity requires abandoning the self-image as a moral person. So the herd finds a third option: selective ignorance. You do not deny that exploitation exists. You simply do not think too much about it. It remains as abstract knowledge that never emotionally connects with your daily actions. This psychological compartmentalization is the herd's ultimate skill. We can hold contradictory beliefs simultaneously as long as we never examine them side by side. We can proclaim values that we constantly violate in practice as long as we keep those values in a separate mental category from our actions. The herd teaches us not only what to believe, but also what not to scrutinize too closely. It teaches us the art of voluntary blindness, the ability to look without seeing, to know without understanding, to act without reflection. And this skill becomes increasingly sophisticated in the information age. Contrary to the utopian expectations of the early internet prophets, unlimited access to information has not created a more informed and critical population. It has created an overwhelmed population that retreats into echo chambers where their preferred ignorance is constantly reinforced. Social media algorithms have perfected the art of giving you exactly the version of reality you prefer, filtering out information that would challenge your existing beliefs. You don't need to actively seek your flock. The flock automatically finds you, gathering all the people who share your biases and presenting them with a carefully curated reality that confirms they are right. This is the collective ignorance in its most advanced form. It no longer even requires active consensus. It is algorithmically generated, personalized for each user, creating millions of small herds, each convinced that it possesses the truth while existing in a hermetic informational bubble. The fragmentation of consensual reality has not eliminated the herd dynamic. It has multiplied it. Now we have countless herds, each ignorant in slightly different ways, each convinced of its superiority over other herds, all participating in the same fundamental structure of mutually validated collective ignorance. The comfort offered by the herd is so powerful that even those who intellectually recognize these mechanisms have difficulty resisting them. You can perfectly understand how crowd psychology works and still find yourself succumbing to it in your own life. Theoretical knowledge does not nullify evolutionary programming. Your brain will continue to crave belonging, will continue to experience pain from social rejection, will continue to seek group validation, even when you know that the group is engaging in collective ignorance. Self-awareness is not enough to escape the trap. Because here is the final truth about collective ignorance. It is, in many ways, more functional than individual clarity. The flock can coordinate mass action. The flock can build civilizations. The flock can mobilize resources for projects that no individual could achieve alone. Shared ignorance creates cohesion, and cohesion creates power. A population of thinking individualists, each constantly questioning, each refusing to conform, could never organize effectively enough to build cities, maintain armies, create complex economies. Civilization itself depends on most people, most of the time accepting simplified narratives without questioning them too deeply. So, you face an impossible choice. You can join the herd, accept their ignorance, enjoy their comforts, participate in their collective power. Or you can stay out, maintain your clarity, endure the isolation, accept your powerlessness. Both options have severe costs. The herd offers you belonging in exchange for your ability to think independently. Solitude offers you clarity in exchange for your ability to function effectively in the social world. There is no happy synthesis of these options. You cannot have both complete truth and complete belonging. The price of clarity is exile. The price of belonging is blindness. The question you must ask yourself, and you must ask it with brutal honesty, is this: how much truth are you really willing to bear? Because the full truth will completely isolate you. It will put you at odds with all the herds. It will leave you without an intellectual home, without a tribe to validate your perceptions, without a community that shares your view of reality. Can you live like this? Or do you need the comfort of the herd, even if that comfort comes packaged with ignorances you know are ignorances? Most choose the herd, not because they are weak, but because they are human. The real question is not why so many choose collective ignorance. The real question is, why do you believe you are different?